I get the opportunity to talk with students from across the country, and I typically get to talk to them about a number of issues: leadership, diversity, social justice, most related to the ways in which the film industry has impacted how we think about ourselves and others. I'm invited to come to campuses to share with them, sort of the impacts of the film industry. A lot of times people think about film as entertainment. I think about it more than that it's a way of not just entertaining, but educating, indoctrinating, brainwashing on down the line. So I sort of get to present to students my thoughts around the ways in which we come to understand film, or how we come to understand ourselves. We forget that there are messages in every film that we teach. I started teaching when I was at Susquehanna University some years ago. I started teaching a course called American Film and Culture. I love the title of that course because it really does hint at that film is a purveyor of culture. That we come to understand this American context by the films that we watch, by the messages that we receive. There are two principles that I tell students. Definitely in my film class, I sort of shaped the class. I said the first is all film is political, meaning somebody is trying to say something to you. There's meanings there. And the second, there are no mistakes in film. Everything you see is intentional. Because what I tell them, because they often question, well, what about ad-libs and anachronisms and all those the movie mistakes that you see? But what I tell them is the reality of the film industry is this: before a movie comes to the big screen, hundreds of sets of eyes have seen it, and everyone has, because of the editorial process, and everybody has had an opportunity to say yes or no. Okay, and so by the time we see it, it's gone through so many layers of scrutiny that people have seen the mistakes, people have seen the ad-libs, and they have decided to keep them because either they fit with the central message, or secondly, it's too expensive to reshoot. And so everything that is intentional. So a lot of the stuff, the negative isms, the stereotyping, the prejudice, discrimination, those types of things that we see, somebody intended for it to be there. And so Henry Giroux, here's how I come to think about the film industry. One thing he said about film, he said, we have given Hollywood as much cultural authority and legitimacy as our educational systems, as our parents, our religious institutions, our community leaders. And so Hollywood becomes this force that we have to reckon with, and we cannot underestimate the role it has played in our world. I mean, not just American society, but look at Hollywood's impact around the world. And so if we're gonna understand any one thing related to how we understand culture, we've got to understand the ways in which Hollywood really impacts it. It impacts not just what we think, but the economy. This is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. So it impacts fashion, it impacts commerce, it impacts how we eat our lunch on a given day, or how we wear our hair. So this is an industry that we've got to pay attention to. What I often say is, Hollywood puts information out. They put movies out, they put different things out. We tell them what we want to see by how much money we spend. So box office returns are what governs what we want to see. And so does Hollywood tell us what we like, or do we tell Hollywood? And so those are that cycle is what we've got to pay attention to. And so when I think about American film, we love comedies. And what I have found, particularly related to diversity, the content of most comedies is about making fun of people. It's about making fun of their identities. And so most oftentimes we see some of them, the most hurtful, damning stuff come out of Hollywood film, particularly in comedies, but because we're laughing at it, we think it's just entertaining. It doesn't mean anything because we're laughing. There's a professor at Penn State some years ago who said, "You are what you laugh at." And when he said that to me, it just sort of burrowed into my heart. And this notion of when we're watching these movies, because we're laughing, we think it's safe. But what the problem is, most people are never really taught skills related to media literacy. We're certainly media savvy, we're surrounded by media at all times, but we've never been taught how to critically think about what's coming across the screen. And so when I think about the things that happen in the movies, what we go into the movie theaters to relax, to go into another world. But what happens is we turn our brains off at the door, and when you turn your brain off, you become a ready receptacle for whatever information Hollywood wants to put out there, and so we don't challenge what's there. So when I think about Hollywood and American culture and what those things mean, I think we are lazy film watchers. So when we think about animated films, I mean, look back. The Disney princess. She's always waiting for the perfect man to come along and rescue her. That's sort of this pattern. Women don't get treated very well in most animated films. So when I saw How to Train Your Dragon, I was taken aback by cultural traditions. And so for those that who haven't seen the movie, it's the story of this young boy who's a member of a Viking clan, and it's about a rite of passage. And so in order to be a man, every Viking must kill a dragon. And so it's sort of the film is about his quest, to be a man and kill. Of course, what is the central message of being a man? We have to be. We're trained in some ways to be violent, that's what that hypermasculinity thing is all about. But if you look deeper, it's about how do we pass on traditions to our next generations. It's about sort of the gender roles, because this is about what men are supposed to do. Women sort of are in a part of the conversation. There's a particular scene where he is speaking to his female friend, where he's explaining to her that he couldn't kill the dragon. There's a play on words where he couldn't or wouldn't. And in the scene he says, "I couldn't kill him because when I looked at him, I saw myself. He was as frightened as I was." That just like the angels began to sing for me when I saw that scene, because when I think about how do we minimize difference in our world, how do we really get beyond sort of the negativity that is associated with diversity and the tensions. If you look at our world today, we don't, the way I say it, we don't talk good across lines of difference. You see how politics are played out. We argue back and forth. Everything, when we talk about difference, it creates tensions and this fighting. And I often question, what is it that we have to do to get beyond this real anger that we see? And what I come back to and what I share with students is the thought that we've got to learn to see each other, not the categories that we belong to, but the people, the heart. Martin Luther King once said, we didn't all arrive on the same ship, but we're all in the same boat now. And so what I try to help students to understand is, if we would learn how just to see the humanity in every person we meet, whether we look like them, think like them, love like them, worship like them, eat like they come from where they come, if we would just learn to see the person, see the heart, then we could actually move somewhere. There's a scene in James Cameron's Avatar well, not a scene, but there's a tradition. The Omaticai people, the Navi people, the blue folks, they have a cultural tradition where when they come into the presence of another being, whether that's an animal or a human or another one of their own, they acknowledge that person by saying, "I see you." And I think, you know, between those two things from film, the notion of "I see you" and I see myself in you, I think that's where we have to start if we're really going to become socially just, you know, a nation that is concerned about its citizens. We've got to see each other. And all the baggage that we bring, all that you bring, you matter to me. If we could get there, wow, what we could do. And so that's where I try to move students from this notion that diversity, there's all these diversity components, and in many ways they're negative, you know, or at least that's the conceptualization. I try to get them to see that diversity is a real opportunity for us to engage with each other and learn about ourselves and learn about others. But in that learning, we learn how to talk to each other. In that learning to talk to each other, what we realize is we're actually not that different.